Thank you. Well, good morning. It's a real pleasure to be here so bright and early. I am humbled and very excited about having the opportunity to come and talk to you all about a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. I'm going to talk a little bit about the topic of leadership. The focus this morning is really taking an angle that many of you may already have thought of, and maybe some of you may not have. My goal here this morning is to leave you with a tidbit or two that allow you to take this back to wherever it is that you work day to day and work with your teams. I call it motivating excellence through love. The agenda looks something like this. I'll give you a little introduction about myself, my role at Nike. What does it mean to be a good leader? Why does it even matter? And how do you become one? And then we're going to save some time on the back end for Q&A. I'm just a small town guy out of McMinnville, Oregon, and never thought I'd be standing here before you all talking about a topic like this. I've just been immensely blessed over the years to have an opportunity to work at Arthur Andersen for about 13 years, and then had the opportunity to join John Harker and several other members early on when InFocus was pretty much an idea, and grew that company to about an $800 million a year company. I did that for about 10 years. Then decided after being in high tech for a while that I needed to find the rest of my brain, and I went over to work for Wieden & Kennedy in a very creative environment that was much different than anything I'd ever done before. Then took a little bit of time working with Pixelworks and their operation in making high definition TVs in a fabless semiconductor environment. And then finally found my way to Nike, which is really for me a coming home. The culture there and what we do is very much consistent with who I am as a human being, and I'll try to weave some of that into the conversation as we go here. I've been married for 28 years. I've got 3 children, 25, 23, and 21. I'm going to jump out of here today and head to watch my daughter play some volleyball in the WAC championships. I have to go to the University of Hawaii to do it. So I really had my arm twisted hard to go to do that, but very excited to go see her play. And I love to fish and ski and be active outside. So my role at Nike is actually a fairly varied one. My background, my subject matter expertise is in accounting and finance. I got my degree in accounting at Linfield back in 1980. And the role that I've been hired into is actually a fascinating one. It's very fun. It's very broad. I have the finance and strat planning element, which was the core part of the job that I was hired into. But I've also been able to get my hand into and be involved with the materials, what we now call our material operations group, which is all around the procurement of materials for footwear. I also spend a fair amount of time working with the supply-demand side of footwear. We did about $10 billion in revenue last year, so we're buying a lot of pairage through about 40 different factories around the world. And so we have a very experienced team that I have the pleasure of working with, where we source product from a number of different places, whether that's Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, China, and now more recently in India. So it's a fascinating part of the job that I have. And then I'm also in a role where I oversee the manufacturing of our airbag systems. It's a company called IHM, and we make about 150 million pairs of airbags a year in a relatively small footprint here in Beaverton. It's just over by the employee store there, the Nike employee store. And then also in a factory in St. Louis, and then more recently we have a factory in Shanghai and in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. So quite a broad array of things that we're doing, and it's a fascinating group. We're doing a lot of amazing things within the footwear there. So a little bit more about the topic, and I want to start with the notion of what's at the heart of leadership. A lot, as I said, has been written about the subject of leadership. And I think that one of the things that I've found to be most effective, regardless of whatever it is that you do, is try to keep things simple. Break them down into bite-sized chunks that they can understand, so they can take that away with them and apply that in some way. So on the topic of leadership, as I was thinking about talking this morning, is I think good leaders are all about enabling a journey of discovery with the people that they work with. A journey of discovery together. And what I'm going to do here over the next few minutes is I want to build a case for why is that even important. But really what we're all about is enabling that journey of discovery, the discovery of knowledge, the discovery of an answer to solve a problem, whatever the case may be. People want to matter. Every person has a story they want to tell. They're not always sure if people want to hear that story, and so they may not be motivated to openly share it. And depending upon what culture you're working in, particularly in Asia, they're very reluctant to share that story with you first until you've developed a deep relationship with them. They keep that inner voice, that second voice, to themselves. Western culture, a little more forthcoming with it, but depending on the environment that you're in, you have to work with somebody and earn that right to be heard. But they have a story they want to tell. They want to matter. People want to be heard when they come to work every day. They want to have a voice. They want to be able to contribute in some positive way. And people generally want to make a difference. They come to work every day with a positive attitude. I rarely have seen somebody come in and say, you know what, my goal today is to screw things up for everybody. Just don't see that very often. So I really want to be heard. I want to tell my story. I want to matter, and I want to make a difference. And lastly, people want to contribute. So if people come into the office every day with these kinds of things, these needs that they innately have, we as leaders need to understand that that's what's going on inside a person's heart and mind. So our job as leaders, I'm going to argue, is that to enable that to happen, for these kinds of things to happen within the human beings that we all work with day to day, regardless of what environment we're operating in. So why does that even matter? I've got a term up here that I don't know how much has been written, and maybe I'm stealing it from somebody shamelessly here. I hope it's legal. But I refer to it as knowledge velocity. You hear about a lot of different kinds of velocity in the business world today, whether that's inventory turns or cash flow or whatever it is. But one of the things I'm going to argue today is that human capital is probably the most valuable asset that an organization has. And yet you don't see it in the accounting rules anywhere. It doesn't show up on anybody's balance sheet anywhere. And oftentimes in certain parts of the world, particularly the areas of the world that we operate in, the idea of labor is something that, hey, just get the next person and bring them in. And yet that asset is a huge underutilized asset. And knowledge velocity, I'm going to argue, is very, very key, because the half-life of knowledge is shrinking ever so rapidly to zero. And if the half-life of knowledge is shrinking to zero, your ability to turn over your knowledge and what you know and what you can contribute as a human being to your organization is immensely critical. And as a leader, your job is to enable that, to pull that out, make sure our velocity for knowledge turnover is faster than our competition. So we must enable that collective intellect of the group to be set free to optimize results and stay ahead of the game. So there's a number of websites out there, and if I was really, really high-tech and I had this all figured out, I'd pull it up live, but I just dropped it into a couple of key points into a slide here. But there's a website out there called Did You Know? And I pulled a couple of factoids off of that, and hopefully you can see that back there, and I'll read some of these off. In China, you are 1 in a million, which means there are 1,300 people just like you. And by the way, that China is going to become the #1 English-speaking country in the world. That the top 25 of India's population, in terms of IQ, is greater than the entire population of the United States. Translated, that means India has more honor students than the United States has kids. That the top 10 in-demand jobs in 2010 didn't even exist in 2004. That's kind of mind-boggling. I mean, all of these are kind of mind-boggling, but the top jobs today didn't even exist 6 years ago. We are preparing students for jobs that didn't even exist, that don't even exist today, that use technologies that haven't been invented yet to solve problems that we don't even know are problems yet. That half of what a student learns in their freshman year of college is obsolete by the time they get into their junior year. For those of us who are paying those college tuition payments, that's not real heartening. And that after 3 years after they've entered employment, 3 years after school, when they come out bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, all ready to change the world, many of them, 95% or so of them, shut down and leave their ability to think and their desire to innovate at home. Well, why is that? And a lot of that has to do with how we lead and how we treat them as human beings. So that doesn't leave all that much left from which to compete and to create a sustainable competitive advantage, unless you know how to tap into that better than your competition. One of the things at Nike that I have been amazed about, and I've only been at Nike for a little over a year, about a year and a half, is that this is something that Nike does really, really well. It's all about team. It's not about you as an individual, it's all about the team. And how do we optimize the performance of that team? And every team that gets formed, whether it's a baseball team, a work team, whatever team it is, goes through a natural transition that in order to get to a point where they can really perform. You form, you norm, you storm, then you perform. So you form a team, it normalizes, then it goes through a storming stage before it can get to performance. And many, 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 many teams fail to get through storming. And why again is that? It's because of the leadership. Leaders, their job is to make sure that they can elevate the performance of that team. And if a team fails, oftentimes you got to look to what's going on with how it's being led. At Nike, I think we do that really, really well, and that's one of our competitive advantages as an organization. So, how do you enable that? How do you become a good leader? And I'm gonna argue a point of view here today that starts really with the servant's heart. And if you take a look at effective leaders don't walk out and proclaim their leadership. Here I am, I'm the leader. I've seen that happen, and most of the time it doesn't work real well. Generally speaking, you need to spend time to earn the right to be heard. And what's at the heart of what I want to share today is that people choose to follow. By definition, that creates somebody who's leading. But people choose to follow you. Those who step out in front and say, I'm your leader, follow me, it's very difficult. We watched an amazing thing happen over the last year and a half with our political system. A gentleman stepped up and created such an amazing demand for himself that a lot of Americans are choosing to follow somebody. Barack Obama is an amazing speaker, orator with a lot of creative ideas. I didn't even vote Democratic. I voted Republican. That's about as all I'll get in terms of politics today. But the thing that amazed me is he has stood up and he's talked about things that spoke to the hearts of people. He's saying, I care about you. So we'll see. But as a servant, when you demonstrate to people that you care about them, they will choose to follow you. Greatest in the kingdom of heaven, to be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, first you have to be a servant of all. And so when I take a look at something like that, I'm like, okay, well if that's true, then let's see how we can apply that in the work life or in the family life or just in life in general. And again, to keep things really simple is extremely important. And so what is God's greatest commandment? God's greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength, and love your neighbor as much as you love yourself. That's generally the portion that people remember. But the piece that I think is extremely critical is the next portion of it. On these two laws are all of the rest of the laws of the prophets written. So what that tells me is that loving God with all of who you are and loving your neighbor as much as you love yourself is foundational to everything else that we do. Foundational to everything. So if that's true, it's kind of like, okay, well, wow, we've got a statistic here where we've got young people coming out of college shutting off their brains 3 years after they've been here 95% of the time. Well, what if we could create an environment where we got 50%? we'd be rocking. We would kick our competition. And so I started off on a journey with this type of mindset way back in the late 80s, early 90s, before I started at InFocus. The whole idea there was to create what we called a learning organization, to open up, to unlock the potential of people by taking this type of a mindset. And I had the extreme pleasure of working with John Harker in helping to create that culture and that environment, and it was founded in these principles. So as I looked at that, I said, well, if that's true, interestingly enough, oftentimes I was observing in the business world just the opposite. People with a command and control mindset. I'm going to tell you what you need to know, what you need to do, and when you need to do it, rather than allowing me to stretch my wings and try something on my own, take a risk. Every now and then I might fail, but that's okay. If somebody picks me up and does says, hey, I still care about you, good try, let's learn from that and move on. Completely different mindset. And that's where we started to go back in the early 90s in creating InFocus. So I didn't really get around to giving this any kind of iconic acronym. Nothing's really real until you give it an acronym, right, in the business world. And at Nike, there are a bazillion of them, and I'm sure that's true in your organizations too. Every day I'm like, okay, I haven't heard that one, what's that one about? And then they tell you and you go, oh yeah, that's right, I knew that. But the acronym that I've given to this is Motivating Excellence Through Love, METAL. It's strong, it lasts, it's foundational. So motivating excellence through love. And what I mean by love is I don't walk into the room every day and go, hey, I love you. How's it going? You know, you don't do that. Love is an action. It's a series of decisions. It's the words you speak. It's the decisions that you make. It's you placing yourself in front of somebody else and being vulnerable with them, letting them know that you don't know everything, because they already know that they don't, but they're trying to pretend like they do because they don't want to look like a fool in front of you. Loving somebody is action every day. And so when you come in and you demonstrate a willingness to care about who they are as a person, whether that's what's going on with their children or their parents or their marriage, and obviously what's going on with them in their particular area of business. How can I help you in your functional area, even though it might mean it might be detrimental to mine, because if I help you win, it helps the company win even more. That's how you demonstrate love day to day in the workplace. And so motivating excellence through love is what I refer to the heart of good leadership. So what are some of the forms that takes? So as I was mentioning earlier, that your neighbor, loving your neighbor as much as you love yourself is an amazing foundational element of the greatest commandment. And so when I walk around companies, generally speaking, they're made up of a lot of people. And you know, I've talked with lots of folks over the years about, well, what should I be doing with my life? Where can I go to have meaning and have an impact, and where God could potentially use me in my life? I got to go somewhere to the backside of the moon in order to really have meaning. And I argue, no, it's right here in your backyard at home. All these people that you deal with every day in work are your neighbors. And that's where that commandment really comes to home. So when I looked at the commandment that way, and I said, all right, well, if people I work with are my neighbors, well, then this must also work here. And over the years, as I mentioned, with some of the jobs that I've had the amazing opportunity and blessing of travel. I've been to China, to Indonesia, to Vietnam, Malaysia, Japan, the Netherlands, the UK, Norway, lots of places. And every place that I've gone, even though the cultures are different and they speak different languages, there's one common language that has always rung true, and that is every single person has always responded to love. And so I'm like, well, wow, this is interesting. So there's a common language here. Well, why is that? Well, I would argue that's because we've all been made in God's image, and God is love. And so if I can use that and share that consistently with people, regardless of where they're from in the world, people are my neighbors, I work in a company with a bunch of people, motivating excellence through love ought to work. So I've got this picture up here. It's actually a picture of a Little League team. This journey started for me. I've had people, as I've shared this message over the years, I had people go, wow, this is really interesting, and you know, what business school did you get this from? And it's like, well, Honestly, I learned it from a bunch of little leaguers when my son was 10. And they were like, what? And the fundamental thing that happened here was I basically was played for a sucker, which happens a lot because I really believe in people. And then if somebody sticks me the first time, then that's it. But I'll step out and I'll try something for the first time. And so my oldest son's 10. He loves baseball. Tualatin Little League has got 6 teams, only 5 coaches. We need a coach. Hey, Mike, will you coach? And I'm like, sure, I'll coach. I knew a little bit about baseball. I played in high school. And so little did I know that there was laughter going on behind the scenes after I volunteered, because nobody told me there was a draft and that all the teams had picked all the best players already, and the 6th team was basically all the kids that were in the lineup that nobody picked, other than my son. So here I come in with this ragtag team of 10 and 11-year-olds who want to play baseball. So the long story short is I came in and I worked with these kids. I wanted them to know that I believed in them. I wanted them to learn the fundamentals of baseball. But more than anything, I worked on building their confidence in who they were as people, and that they could do whatever they set their mind to do. That first year, we only won 2 games. But the next 2 years, we didn't lose a single game. And I was wow. By the end of that second year, the coaches were like, this isn't fair. You know, this isn't fair. What you've done, you've stacked this thing. And I remind them, I go, well, wait a minute. I think a year ago, I didn't even get to draft any of the first-round draft picks. I got everybody that nobody else wanted. What happened there? What fundamentally happened is these kids rose to the occasion because somebody stepped out and said, I believe in you. And I will teach you the fundamental things that you need to know about how to be a baseball player in this instance. And then they took it from there. And everybody's boat rose to the top. Everybody's, including the coaches. So that was, I kind of tucked that away in my heart. And this happened, back when I was like 28, 29. And so it was a great learning. It continues. I've got this thing that I'm working on right now, and several people here in the audience know about this thing. But there's this case study in the making that's going on right now around motivating excellence through love, and we call it Wild Horse Games. And what we're doing is we're taking a group of people from all walks of life, people who are in their early 20s to old gummers like myself, and everything in between. Some of them are athletes, some of them aren't. But the whole idea is to create a team athletic event that'll be unprecedented in Central Oregon, out at the Young Life Ranch there, the 66,000-acre Young Life Ranch called Wild Horse Ranch, to raise money on behalf of Young Life. And when this thing started out, it was just a small idea, and it has just grown and grown and grown. But fundamental, at the core of this, is this notion of motivating excellence through love and talking to people and saying, you know what, here I am, use me. Do you want to be used? Yes, I do. Don't worry about how much experience you have. Come on board. We'll learn this together, and I will continue to love you and care for you, and we'll all work together, and we'll make that happen. So we've got this group of people from all walks of life coming together with a common vision. It's a team, and we've had our storming days. We had our first storming day in April out on site where we weren't really sure about the vision. But once we got through that, now we've been flying. So again, it doesn't matter whether it's something that you're doing with volunteer work, with kids, or in the professional life, this works. Why? I read a book once that had this story in it about the sea anemone and the correlation to the human heart. The human heart is a lot like a sea anemone. It's very beautiful, but it's also very delicate. Whenever you've had the chance as a child to go over to the ocean and go down into those down into the pools when the tide is out, and you see these beautiful flower-like things sitting in the water, and you reach down and you touch them, they quickly close up after you touch them the first time, but then it opens again. Then you touch it a second time, it closes up, but it takes a little longer to open up the second time, but it finally does open. You touch it the third time, it's like, okay, I've had enough. I'm not opening up again. I'm staying shut. And that, I argue, is the human heart. If somebody stabs you in the heart with some just terrible words or an action, the first time, okay, I can handle that. Okay, that's fine. I can get past that. Second time, wow. Did I miss something here? Third time, it's like, forget it. I'm done. I'm not going to open up again. Why should I open myself up to that kind of treatment? So the human heart is much like a sea anemone. Starts with servanthood. As I mentioned earlier, it emanates then out into the words that you speak, the decisions that you make, and the actions that you take. Another thing that I've observed over the years is that we as Westerners take words very, very frivolously relative to Eastern cultures. There is unbelievable power in the words that you choose every day. I can't overstate that. Once you say something, we've all done it, I've been there. Not too long ago, I was in a session where I said something, and the moment those words came out of my mouth, I'm like, you idiot, you can't pull them back. They're out. They've reached somebody else's heart because they've heard them. And that impacts then what they think about you, about a lot of different situations, how they feel, whether they're willing to take a risk and step out, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So be very, very careful with the words that you speak. They are extremely powerful, and they can't be retracted once they've been released. They can motivate, or they can tear down. My kids all had the opportunity to go to Jesuit high school, which, depending on who you are, you may think was a good thing or a bad thing. But it was a good thing, and it was hard. But one of the things that they took away from this experience that I will always remember is an exercise their junior year where they go through what's called a palanca. And a palanca is an affirmation letter. And basically they all had to go out and ask 3 different people to write a letter of affirmation about them. Most of us in our lives don't ever get an affirmation letter like this until we see our names in the your relatives see your name in the obituaries and you've passed on. And people say amazing things about how wonderful Joe or Jane was. I hope and I pray that in our lifetimes you don't wait for that in all the relationships that you're in. Affirmation is a very powerful tool. And I watch those affirmations letters from friends and family and coaches and things change people's lives, including my own children. So words, very careful. Easterners understand this very, very well. We Westerners need to learn it more. So the decisions you make, the words you speak, now the decisions that you make, your behavior. You will reap what you sow. It's just a matter of time. It comes full circle. Could be really quick, could be a lifetime, but you will reap what you sow. And ethical behavior is very, very key in motivating excellence through love. I tell people all the time, your life is an open book. Each page of every day you're writing in that book. Ask yourself, what does that book say? What are people reading when they read your book today? You're a teacher, whether you know it or not, every moment of every day. Whether it's your children watching your interactions with your spouse, or your employees watching your interactions with the decision that you're going to make. Just the other day, I had a very small decision that I needed to make where we had an error in a spreadsheet that's very visible inside of Nike. And 2 people who were working on this, because we're getting ready to make a presentation using this spreadsheet, said, Mike, hey, we've got an error in the spreadsheet and it's giving an answer that we've been sharing differently before. What do we do? I said, well, we've got to change it. Well, we can't tell everybody. Yeah, we can. Just say, we had an error in the spreadsheet. Open, honest, transparency. Key decision at that point right there. What was happening is Mike Yonker, whether I realized it or not, or they realized it or not, was in a test. What was my book going to say? Because they're watching what's being written on my page that day. What's Mike's consistent behavior? Did he make a decision, the right decision, because it was right or not? Pride is the integrity killer, and we've seen a lot of this. And the fall is huge and very rapid. Why? Because it comes back to the premise of people choose to follow you. It's something they've given you. So if you do something to screw it up, it goes away. It falls away very, very fast. We've seen examples of this with Arthur Andersen and Enron in the business world. You see it way, way too much. It's very sad, but we see it all the time in relationships, whether you're lying or you're cheating, adulterous relationships, whatever they are. And oftentimes pride keeps us from being able to admit our weaknesses. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in a situation that's falling and crumbling around your feet and you don't know how to get out of it. But an interesting thing that I share a lot of times with folks, and I actually am doing this with several people on my team, got some members on my team that are unbelievable, outstanding leadership potential, way too arrogant. Way too arrogant. And I tell them, mix a little humility in with that. A little bit of humility in with pride, and you get confidence. And people love to be around confident people. It feeds on itself. It starts to snowball. So the appropriate level of humility mixed in with pride turns something that could be ugly into something very beautiful called confidence. And you end up with someone who's really smart but very approachable. Someone who's able to admit their mistakes and then learn from them. Someone who's quick to listen, slow to speak, and even slower to anger. And someone who is being real and transparent. Humility reminds us of the responsibility that comes with leadership, keeping it in the right perspective. If you start to think you're anything more than you really are, pride's starting to get out too far in front of it. Let humility keep it in the right perspective. The power of influence that comes from leading is a gift that's granted to you by others who trust you. So therefore it comes with a very high degree of responsibility and needs to be shared and cared for wisely. It can be withdrawn much faster than it was originally earned or given. I love this quote. Mr. Eisenhower, I think, got it really well. You don't lead by hitting people over the head. That's assault. So leadership is not about power. It's about setting a vision and hope for the future, and then enabling excellence in those who follow you to achieve a higher result. You discover together in a journey together. You're enabling the discovery of knowledge that is ever so precious and going shorter and shorter and shorter. And those of us who can figure out how to enable that to happen faster than the competition are the people who are going to win. And that's going to create and enable what we refer to as high-performing teams. So in summary, starts with a servant's heart. Pick your words wisely because they have amazing power. They can either jumpstart you forward and get your team through a period of time where they're storming and move them beyond that to get to where they can perform because they know they can take risk and not be pounded and beat up and humiliated and embarrassed in public. Also goes day to day with ethical behavior and the decisions that you make because people are watching everything that you do day to day and your life is an open book. And then mix in the appropriate level of humility and you get confidence. So motivating excellence through love is a combination of these things, I would argue. And through that you get great performing teams and you have the opportunity to have sustainable competitive advantage. So I will now, I've been told I needed to save, I think I'm pretty good on time, a couple minutes, okay, for some Q&A. Please feel free to fire away and I'll answer them as best I can. Yes?
I'd like to hear more about the wild games. What kind of games and who participates?
Okay. I was hoping somebody would ask that. Wanted to hear, the question is, repeat the question. Yes, the question is, I want to hear more about the wild games. What is it? What's going to happen? How do you participate? Wild Horse Games is a combination of athleticism and participation and luck. And it includes a team triathlon, a wilderness geocaching event over 66,000 acres. There's 3/4 mile long zip lines that we've incorporated into this. There's a thing called the Blob Tower that launches you about 20 feet into the air, and then you swim across a lake to climb what in essence is a floating climbing wall. We call it the iceberg. It looks like an iceberg, about 20 feet tall. There's a canyon swing, and there's a ropes course, an obstacle course, and then there's what we're referring to as the Creek to Peak Relay, which has the Ben-Hur Chariot Race in it. And then there's a speed swim, and then there's about a 1,500-foot elevation sprint at the end. It happens over the course of Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We've stole shamelessly wherever the law allows you to do that. I'm a big believer in not reinventing the wheel. And so there are many elements similar to like what we have in things like the Hood to Coast or the pole pedal paddle out in Bend. But what we're doing is we're housing you and we're feeding you for the weekend, and then we're going to challenge you in ways that you don't expect. And the key thing to this whole thing is strategy and building your team, building its strategy to optimize the assets that it has. Because you're going to have people spread out all over the place, and you've got to figure out who's really good with a digital device and trying to figure out how to orient their way to something that's hidden miles away. You need somebody who's relatively small and lightweight. You need somebody who's good and can handle themselves at heights. You need people who can swim. You need people who can run. You need people who can mountain bike. And you got to figure out as a team leader how to optimize those assets. It's going to be a great team building event. You don't have to be world-class athletes to do it. There are people in hood to coast that come dressed in tutus and enjoy themselves just as much as the folks who run 5-minute miles and everything in between. So our goal is to draw people out of the working world to rediscover the kid in them. That's our byline, rediscovering the kid in you, through a combination of athleticism, participation, and fun. So that's what it's about.
Do you come as a team, or do
You come as a team. So my plug is wildhorsegames.org, www.wildhorsegames.org. We need teams to sign up. Companies are sponsoring teams. People are putting teams together with just a bunch of friends. People are putting teams together from people at work, people at church, people at home, any of the above. The only thing you have to be is 16 years of age and a willing heart to try. Great question, thank you. May 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 2009.
Size of team?
10 people per team. Yes. $400 a person, which includes your room and board. Okay, yes, in the back.
Hi, Mike. Kindness is often mistaken for weakness. How do you reconcile this philosophy with that thought? When you're kind and gentle, or try to be a leader with a servant's heart,
Yep.
it's often mistaken for timidity, or so how do you reconcile this philosophy that you espouse today?
Yes, great question. The question is, kindness is often mistaken for weakness, particularly in the business world, and I agree with that. I have seen that, and I've evidenced that in my own life. And so how do you reconcile that with this philosophy of motivating excellence through love? A couple of things. First off, when somebody comes after you and stabs you in the back, whatever you want to call it, there's a difference between loving somebody and I call it speak the truth in love. So if somebody comes after you the first time, it's like, look, hey, we had a conversation here, here's what we're doing, I was trusting you to do this, and you did this. You got to come after that issue. Loving somebody at times is saying very hard things to them. Loving doesn't mean wishy-washy, milquetoast backbone. Oftentimes, love comes in the form of very hard conversations. And the person doesn't realize it when it's happening, but later they thank you for it. So I want to be very careful with what I'm saying. What I'm not saying is that you're always kind of this milquetoast, never challenge. I'm telling you, there are times when you've got to say some things to people that go right to the heart of the matter, and the last thing they want to do is hear about it. And sometimes that is, last time you did this, I know that you stuck me in the back. Or I wouldn't say it that way, but you did this and it resulted in this and it undermined our team's performance. That's unacceptable. And it may mean you're off the team, it may mean you're out of the company. So simplify it down. Oftentimes when that's happened to me, the second time around it won't happen again. And so I want to be very careful. The other thing I also want to say, and goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, and that is you got to know what you know. You can't kind of waltz into a leadership position and not have substance. Whatever your subject matter expertise is, you got to know what you know. Mine happens to be in accounting and finance and process excellence. I know that stuff. I know how to problem solve. But I also know that I am not the font of all knowledge. So a combination of being open and willing to listen. If somebody perceives that as weakness and comes after you, the next time around it probably won't be so fun. So that's a great question, because oftentimes I think people see that. Flip that coin over. If somebody takes that and runs with that in a positive way, you see amazing things happen. And people who, I oftentimes have had people on teams that nobody else wanted to pick in the business world. Hey, here's our high-performing list of capable employees, and everybody's scrambling for them, and then there's everybody else. And in a bell curve in a company, that's a lot of people. My goal is to try to figure out how to help all of us figure out how to be better, including the rest of the bell curve. And you can get a lot more out of the rest of that bell curve through the things that I've shared today. But there are folks like that out there that will say, here's weakness, I'm going to take advantage of it. Okay, great question. Time for one more? Yes?
Will you share your PowerPoint presentation?
I should have said that along the way. The question is, will I share it? The PowerPoint presentation, we're going to have it up on the website. So the answer to that is yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much for the time this morning. I really appreciate it.